Have you ever wondered if a job could kill you? No. Not with danger, but with secrets so strange, they gnaw at your sanity. Or, let me ask you this. What would you do if a silent red watch on your wrist started ordering you to stand? Would you obey? Not knowing what waits if you don't. That's the kind of nightmare I stumbled into when I took the most ordinary sounding job on paper, toll collector on a lonely stretch of Highway 371, buried deep in the humid underbelly of Louisiana. It was a job as plain as day: sit in a booth, swipe cards, take cash, lift the gate, scribble license plates in a battered notepad. No health insurance, no sick leave, no overtime. Just a bare-bones paycheck, hovering a whisper above minimum wage. Yet, beneath that thin surface, something festered. Something no one warned me about. Desperation drove me to it. My car had coughed its last breath. Rent was overdue, and my landlord's patience was running on fumes. A cousin I barely kept in touch with handed me this lifeline: they're hiring. No questions asked, no paperwork, just show up. You can start tonight. So, I did. And when the man in charge passed me the cold, rusty keys, he muttered something that should have sent me running. Don't worry about the weird stuff. Just follow the alerts. I laughed it off, assuming he meant stone warnings or amber alerts crackling through a dusty radio. But I couldn't have been more wrong. That first night swallowed me whole in its quiet. I arrived at the booth at 10:45 p.m. The thick air, sticky on my skin. The booth itself was a cramped, rotting box, no bigger than a closet. Inside, a metal chair with cracked vinyl, a desk scarred with cigarette burns. A stubborn cash drawer, a yellowed notepad clinging to its last pages. A wheezing fan that did little to fight the heat, and one item that made my gut twist the moment I saw it. A watch. Not the kind you'd buy at Walmart or find in your granddad's drawer. This was strange. A black band tied around my wrist. Its screen pulsing a dim red glow. No clock face, no numbers, no buttons. No apps. Just that blood-colored screen, waiting. As if it was alive. I told myself it must be some outdated tracker for my hours. Maybe my heartbeat. Hours oozed by like molasses. A trickle of cars rolled through. I collected tolls, logged plates, battled mosquitoes the size of quarters. My eyelids grew heavy. Then, at exactly 1:13 a.m., the watch came to life. One word. Stand. My throat constricted as I forced myself to clear it. I blinked at the watch, puzzled. Heart thumping like a drum. Before I could think, a voice, not from the booth, not from my phone, echoed deep in my skull. Like a broadcast beamed straight into my mind. Emergency notice. Rule 4. Between 1:10 and 1:20 a.m., do not remain seated. Every hair on my arm stood at attention. Without hesitation, I shoved the chair back, its legs shrieking across the floor, and stood. That's when I saw it. Outside the booth's grimy window, a shape crept past. A black, slithering mass that clung to the ground like a shadow came alive. No feet, no face, no sound. Just endless black stretching across the asphalt. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. The thing didn't look at me, if it even had eyes. Time dragged its feet. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the watch's glow blinked out at 1:20. The thing was gone. That was the first rule I learned. The first night that taught me, this job wasn't about tolls. It was about surviving whatever shared that highway with me. So tell me, if you were in that booth, would you follow the watch? Would you obey, even if you didn't understand? Or, would curiosity get the better of you? Stick around. Because what came next? It wasn't just rules. It was warnings. And breaking them had a price. By the end of that first hellish week, I had 7 rules scrawled in shaky handwriting across the stained pages of my notepad. A personal Bible of survival, stitched together, not by logic, but by fear. None of these rules came from a training manual. No supervisor handed them to me with a wink and a good luck. No, they came to me in the dead of night, whispered by that voice that invaded my mind, delivered through that cursed red watch. Like some cryptic survival guide written for a world that shouldn't exist. And as I learned quickly, violating these rules wasn't just careless. It was suicidal. Here's what I lived by. Rule 1. If the same car passes through twice within 10 minutes, no matter the driver, no matter how innocent they look, you charge double. Rule 2. If a child is behind the wheel, you wave them through. Don't take their money. Don't ask questions. Rule 3. If you hear knocking beneath the floorboards, play the booth's radio immediately. Rule 4. Between 1:10 and 1:20 a.m., do not stay seated. Stand up and don't sit until it's over. Rule 5. Never look at anyone who speaks backward. Keep your eyes down. Rule 6. If an old woman pays with exact change, look into her eyes. Make sure they're human. Rule 7. If the watch flashes the word hide, crawl under the desk and do not, under any circumstances, breathe loud enough to be heard. At first glance, some of these rules seemed almost laughable. A child driving? Charge double for the same car. But trust me, they weren't jokes. I didn't invent them. I didn't dream them up during a long, lonely shift. These were commands, delivered in that hollow voice that echoed through my skull like the tolling of a funeral bell. And behind every rule, there was a consequence waiting, sharp-toothed and unforgiving, for those foolish enough to ignore it. And I, like a fool, learned that lesson the hard way. It was on my 12th shift, a night that began like all the others, thick with the scent of swamp rot and the unshakable feeling of being watched. The air hung heavy, and the booth felt smaller somehow, like the walls were inching closer, trying to squeeze the life out of me. Around 3 a.m., when the world felt more dead than asleep, I heard it. At first, it was a faint tap-tap-tap beneath the floorboards. Like someone drumming their fingers, impatient, waiting for me to slip up. I froze, my ears straining in the dark. The tapping grew bolder, louder. A steady knocking that seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. Rule 3. I knew what it demanded. Turn on the radio. Drown out the sound. But I hesitated. The watch stayed dark, no word, no alert. And in my arrogance, or perhaps exhaustion, I convinced myself the rule wasn't active tonight. Maybe it was just the building settling, or rats beneath the floor. I reasoned it away, because the truth was too frightening to face. That's when the knocking stopped. For the briefest breath of a second, all was silent. And then, crack. The floor split. The wood splintered like kindling. From that jagged opening, a hand emerged. A hand that wasn't right. Its skin was a sickly gray, stretched tight over bones that jutted at the wrong angles. Fingers, 6 of them, too long, too thin, tipped with nails like slivers of glass. It moved with eerie grace, wrapping around the leg of my chair as if it had all the time in the world. My blood turned to ice. My throat tightened so violently I thought I'd choke. I opened my mouth, but no sound came, not at first. Then, instinct took over. My shaking fingers smacked the radio dial, and the booth erupted in a wave of static and white noise. The hand twitched. Its fingers flexed, as if testing the air. And then, like smoke caught in a breeze, it slipped back beneath the floorboards, vanishing into the dark crack that slowly sealed itself shut. I didn't sleep the next day. I couldn't. Because now I knew, these weren't empty rules. They were shields. And breaking them had woken something that still wasn't done with me. Even now, on some nights, that knocking comes back. Faint at first, like a memory I can't bury. A reminder that it's waiting. And believe me, every single time, I play the radio. So what would you do if you sat in that booth, with nothing but a flickering radio and a set of rules that felt more like warnings than guidance. Would you follow them, or would curiosity, or pride, cost you everything? Stay tuned. Because what I've shared, that was only the beginning. And the worst, the rule I couldn't bring myself to obey, nearly cost me my life. It was a night like all the others, or so I told myself. But deep down, I sensed it. That heavy, suffocating stillness that wraps around you right before something breaks. And when it broke, it changed everything. I had grown used to the rhythm of terror. The familiar pulse of that watch lighting up with commands. The quiet dread of waiting for what came next. But this night rewrote the rules, quite literally. Sometime past 2 a.m., when the fog rolled in thick as graveyard mist and the highway lay deserted, I felt it. The sudden, unnatural drop in temperature. The way the air seemed to thicken, as if the darkness itself had weight. That's when I noticed the car. No headlights. No engine hum. I never heard it arrive. It was simply there, idling at the gate like it had materialized from thin air. Its paint was the color of rusted iron, the body warped in places, as if it had seen things no car should survive. Then, the watch blinked red, its glow casting eerie shadows on the booth walls. Eyes. A single word. But before my heart could even quicken, that voice, the one that felt like it scraped across my bones, filled my head. Emergency notice. Rule 6. If an old woman pays with exact change, check her eyes. And there she was. Without sound, without warning, she stood at my window. Her skin looked like crumpled parchment, so thin it seemed the wind might tear it. Her hand, trembling but purposeful, reached out with a wrinkled dollar bill and a small, shaking handful of coins. $1.25, she whispered, her voice like dead leaves brushing across pavement. And then, she smiled, a slow, hollow curve of the lips that didn't touch her hollow expression. I forced myself to look up. My throat tightened so violently I thought I might gag. Where her eyes should have been, nothing. Not blindness, not damaged or scarred. Just two dark pits, empty as an open grave, as if something had scooped her soul out through those voids. Panic clawed at me. My instinct shrieked at me to look away, to close the window, to flee. My fingers fumbled for the button, eager to lift the gate, to be rid of her, to end this nightmare. Keep the change, I stammered, voice cracking, as I reached for the switch. But she didn't move. She didn't drive through. Instead, she remained there, frozen, smile still carved into that lifeless face. And then she spoke again, her voice sharper this time, the sound burrowing under my skin like ice water pouring down my spine. You're not checking close enough. My skin crawled. My heart pounded so loud I was sure she could hear it. I spun and slapped the radio on, hoping the static would break whatever spell this was. But the radio gave me nothing, only silence, as if the booth itself held its breath. And when I turned back, she was gone. The car, the woman, the coins she had held. Every trace of them vanished like smoke. The only evidence she had ever been there was the cold dread that clung to me like a second skin. Then, as if the booth had decided to twist the knife, I heard it. The flip of paper. I turned slowly, every nerve on edge. My notepad, my tattered lifeline of rules, lay open on the desk. The page glistened, as if ink had just been spilled across it, fresh and black, bleeding into the paper like it had a mind of its own. And there it was. A new rule. One I had never written. One that hadn't come from the voice, at least, not yet. Rule 8, never let her speak twice. I was trembling. Not from the cold, from knowing. From the sick certainty that she wasn't finished. What would I do if she came back? Because deep down, I knew this much. She will. Not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but one night, she'll return. And next time, she won't knock. She won't smile. And she sure as hell won't wait. So if you thought that was strange, you haven't heard the worst of it. Because the deeper the night went, the darker the rules got. And trust me, they only got harder to follow. It started like any other night. But by now, I knew better than to trust the quiet. The quiet was a liar. It wrapped itself around the booth like a shroud, hiding what waited beneath. And that night, it had something I still can't explain. It was well past 2 a.m. when the red glow of the watch broke through the darkness, casting its sinister light across my hand. Double. The word pulsed, as if alive. And I knew exactly what it meant. Rule 1. Same car twice within 10 minutes, you charge double. Simple, right? But nothing out here was ever simple. At 2:04, I'd seen it. A silver SUV. Its body, dusty. A small dent carved into the rear bumper like a scar, and a cheap pine tree air freshener swinging from the mirror. I barely gave it a thought as it rolled through. But at 2:09, there it was again. Same vehicle, same dent, same swaying air freshener. I felt my stomach twist as I stepped to the window. That's gonna be $250, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You came through already. The driver, a man maybe in his 30s, pale as moonlight, sweat dripping from his hairline, didn't argue. His hands trembled as he fumbled for his wallet. He handed me the cash like someone surrendering. Like he knew the rules too, somehow. But just as I reached for the gate button, thinking this would be the end of it, he leaned forward. His eyes locked on mine, wide and glassy, the eyes of a man who'd seen something that broke him. I never turned around, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I just kept driving straight. Never saw it turn off. Never hit a loop. But I'm back here. I froze. My mouth went dry. My mind raced for something, anything, to say. But the words died in my throat. He swallowed hard, desperation bleeding into his voice. Do I keep going? Or will I come back again? And then, the watch blinked. Don't. Just like that. One word. A command. The gate stayed shut beneath my fingers. I didn't argue, I didn't dare. The man's face crumpled, fear, confusion, hopelessness. He opened his mouth, maybe to plead, maybe to curse, but before any sound came out, headlights bloomed in the rearview mirror. Another vehicle. Another silver SUV. Identical in every detail. The dent, the dirt, the dangling air freshener swaying in the still night air. But this one had no driver. The empty SUV rolled forward. Silent, steady. As if guided by unseen hands. Or maybe something worse. The man in front of me saw it too. His eyes darted to the mirror, his breath quick and shallow. What the hell is happening? He choked out, voice cracking. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The truth was, I didn't know. The two vehicles sat there, one with a terrified man trapped behind the wheel. The other hollow and soulless, like a reflection that had stepped out of the glass to take his place. And I could do nothing but watch. By the third week, I stopped trying to make sense of any of it. I gave up looking for patterns, for logic, for any thread that might tie this nightmare together. The highway didn't play by human rules. And I'd learned, the hard way, that trying to outthink it only made it hungrier. So I obeyed. Every alert, every rule, no matter how strange, no matter how terrifying. I followed them like gospel. But even blind obedience wasn't always enough. One night, the air thicker than usual, heavy with a storm that never came, the watch went mad. The red glow didn't just blink. It flashed, frantic and blinding, casting the booth in hellish light. Danger. Danger, danger. Over and over, pulsing faster than my heartbeat. No rule, no instruction. Just that single word hammering into my brain. And then, the broadcast. Emergency override. Hide now. Don't ask questions. That voice, cold, mechanical, empty, didn't leave room for hesitation. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I dropped to the floor and crawled under the desk, the splinters biting into my palms. I didn't kill the lights. I didn't even look at the gate. There wasn't time. And then I heard it. A scraping sound, low, deep, like metal being dragged across asphalt. But not in jerks or bursts. This was smooth, relentless. Something enormous was moving past the booth, slow and steady, like it knew exactly where I was. Bigger than a semi, bigger than anything I'd ever seen on that stretch of road. And yet, it cast no shadow. It made no noise except that endless, skin-crawling scrape. And then, it spoke. A voice like rust. Like wind through a graveyard, like metal tearing itself apart.
Rule breaker! Fear!
The word stretched, cracked, echoed through the night. My throat clenched so tight it hurt. My lungs screamed for air, but I didn't dare breathe. It dragged itself along, slow, sniffing. Or maybe listening. Searching.
Took the coin. Kept the stare. No radio.
The words slithered under the booth's door like smoke, wrapping around me, choking me. It was naming the rules, the ones that had been broken, by me or by someone before. And then, the booth lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then died. The watch's glow blinked out. Dead silence. Dead dark. I knew, in that instant, it was right outside. Close enough to touch. Close enough to end me if I made a sound. So, I didn't breathe. Not a gasp, not a whimper. I lay there, every muscle locked, while time twisted itself into something unrecognizable. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes felt like hours. The thing waited. And so did I. And then, as if satisfied, or maybe bored, it moved on. The scraping faded, swallowed by the night. The lights snapped back. The booth hummed with power again. And the road? Empty. Like nothing had ever been there. But the notepad told a different story. Its pages rustled on their own, as if the wind turned them, but the booth was sealed tight. And there, scrawled in jagged, angry writing that looked burned into the paper. Rule 9. You only get one warning. I don't know who writes the rules. I don't know what writes them. I don't know why this stretch of highway is cursed, why this patch of blacktop demands so much from anyone foolish enough to man this booth. And somewhere along the way, I stopped asking. Because some questions only invite answers you can't survive. There are nights when the cars that roll through carry faces I know, faces I loved, faces I buried. A cousin who died 5 years ago, smiling behind the wheel like we're meeting for coffee. My mother, long gone, waving like nothing's wrong. Old friends. Former neighbors, all dead. All acting like they're just out for a midnight drive. And I say nothing. I stare at the tolls, at the coins, at anything but them. Because speaking, acknowledging, might open a door I can't close. And then there are nights when the watch stays dark. No alerts, no rules, no guidance. And those nights? Those are the worst of all. Because silence on this road doesn't mean safety. Silence means it's watching, it's waiting. Measuring my resolve. Testing whether I'll crack. I tell myself I can't do this forever, that, one day, I'll walk out of the booth, leave the keys on the desk, and drive until I'm free. And I almost did. Once. It was just before dawn. I'd had enough. My bag was packed. My hand was on the door. I told myself, this is it. I'm done. Let someone else play this game. That's when the watch turned red. Stay. The word bled through the dark like an open wound. And then, the voice followed, that voice that sounds like wind howling through a graveyard. Final rule. If you leave, it follows. And that was it. No explanation, no second chance, just a final, quiet threat that wrapped icy fingers around my spine. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know. So, I'm still here, watching, listening, obeying. Writing new rules each time that cursed watch lights up, adding them to this frayed, stained notebook that has become my last line of defense. And if you're hearing this, if you ever find this notebook left behind in an empty booth, pages filled with these rules, that don't make sense, but feel heavy with purpose, for God's sake, don't ignore it. Because the booth may stand empty. The chair may sit cold. But the rules still stand. And the watch will find someone new. So, tell me, when it does, would you be ready?